Welcome to Break the Cycle with Bethany Dotson, the podcast for high achieving professional women who struggle with codependency, attracting emotionally unavailable partners, and who repeat dysfunctional patterns in love. I'm your host, Bethany Dotson, and if you want to learn more about how to break your cycle in love, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and be the first to know when a new episode drops. I'll see you inside. I want to talk about how to overcome your fear of being alone. So, this is going to really apply to you if you've spent many years in a dysfunctional marriage or even many years in a long term relationship. And you probably sensed there were red flags or questionable behavior very early on with your ex, but you chose to stay and hope for the best. And we can all uh, admit that we've probably done that in the past. But you may be now on the other side of that relationship, whether you ended it or whether your partner ended it, and questioning, how do I go on? Like, how do I get back to where I was? I hear a lot of times when I'm on the phone with women, they really want to get back to where they were. They have this picture of the past that they were before their ex. And I'm here to bust some myths about what is going to keep you stuck in that fear of loneliness and that insecurity place, and what it takes to overcome that and overcome the trauma pattern likely that's at the root of your choices in romantic partnership. The first thing that I want to say is that two mistakes, two big myths, two things that you might be doing that I'm going to poo on. The first thing that I see people getting trapped in is to avoid feeling lonely or to avoid the feelings of loneliness is staying chronically busy. And before I even get into that, there is really the biggest miss that I'm going to shift here is not that there's really a fear of loneliness, although that is probably present for you at this time. The real issue here is the inability to properly handle uncomfortable emotions. So, if you're super honest with yourself, you probably overrode hundreds of red flags in your last relationship. You have probably given people too many chances. You probably have a hard time saying no, and you instead say yes when you really mean to say no because you might struggle with people pleasing. You don't want people to think that badly of you. So, the real issue here is your own inability to properly and effectively handle uncomfortable emotions. And this is going to derail you, not just in your romantic partnerships, but in your job environments, possibly in the relationship. If you have children, your relationships with your children. If you're co parenting with a narcissistic ex, it's going to derail you there, possibly your friendships. When you don't know how to handle your uncomfortable feelings as they come up in the moment, most people identify that they're feeling triggered because they're starting to feel activated in their body. When you don't know how to effectively handle that, most often, 99.9% of the time, the response to that is to shove it down. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel that. And when I work with professional women who are successful in other areas of their life, that I don't want to feel that, I don't want to feel that pattern surfaces as staying chronically busy, meaning they wake up, they might feel overwhelmed the moment they open their eyes in the morning. They might struggle with anxiety and feeling that they have so many things to do and they just 40 hours in the day, and then they'll be able to get enough stuff done on and move things off their plate. They may be still ruminating about an ex. They may be wondering every single day when they go to work or when they go to their kids' functions at school and they see other parents and families together, if they're ever going to have that type of a relationship. So they spend a lot of time working, taking care of things around the house, taking on projects. I often talked to women who they get out of the relationship and then they sign up for counseling and 4 other coaching programs. And then they sign up for a 12-step CODA meeting group. And then they do this and they sign up for a hiking club. And then they sign up for a running club. And then they do this and then they take book the trip. And they get so consumed with filling the space with busyness that then they feel even worse because they're not giving themselves proper time and space to feel their feelings. And most importantly, they're not learning effective strategies for how to to navigate those uncomfortable feelings and how to literally rewire that trauma that's happening when they're faced with conflict or uncomfortable situations. So, a lot of people who struggle with unhealthy relationships often have some type of relational trauma in their background, whether it was an unhealthy childhood, whether they had a narcissistic relationship, and then every guy after that has been dysfunctional. There's some type of trauma that has made an impression in her thinking and in the way that she feels about herself. And most importantly, in the subconscious beliefs that she has about herself and about the world. And when you stay chronically busy, you are just keeping your thinking, you're keeping yourself distracted. But if you're honest with yourself, you probably distracted yourself a lot from the truth in the relationship that it was not the right relationship for you. And you got really adept and masterful at ignoring reality and buying into a fantasy. And if we get really honest here, the pattern of ignoring reality, ignoring the consequences of your actions, and continuing to buy into a fantasy is the same foundational behavior of an addict. An addict will constantly tell him or herself, it's not that bad. I've got it under control. It's only a couple of drinks. I'm only using a few times a month. It's not that bad. And then they will try to justify their behavior so that they don't have to face the emotional consequences of their actions. And so this may be you. This may be your pattern in terms of your ex. And when you stay chronically busy, you never learn a healthier pattern. You're just constantly in a state of fight or flight, trying to put out fires, probably fixing and rescuing and taking care of everybody else but yourself. And when you do have downtime, probably wondering, will I ever have a great relationship? Will I ever meet anybody? Am I too old? Are my days, is my window, is my window of time getting smaller and smaller? Have I missed my chance? So there's all this negative chatter that goes on in your mind. The other thing I want to talk about before we move on to the second mistake. So, mistake number one on what you might be doing to handle your loneliness or your fear of being alone is staying chronically busy. But just like an alcoholic tells himself, having 5 beers a night does not qualify me as an alcoholic. When you stay chronically busy, you are just coping with the symptom. It's like taking an Advil when you have headaches every day, but you're not really getting to the root reason behind your headaches. So if you're staying chronically busy, it's basically like taking an Advil every day to numb yourself out, but you're never truly addressing or healing the root reason behind your chronic busyness and behind your pattern at large of choosing emotionally unavailable partners or narcissistic partners. And that is often unhealed trauma, unhealed relational trauma. So, mistake number two that people often get stuck in as a way to cope, albeit in an unhealthy way, with their feelings of loneliness and the fear of the future and the fear of starting over again, is by spending a lot of time blaming the downfall of the relationship on their ex. So, I know this is probably going to rub people the wrong way. And I'm not here victim blame. And I'm not here to say that your ex's actions were justified or right or excusable. I'm not saying any of that. The danger that I see a lot of people, especially women, getting into is they spend an inordinate amount of time blaming their situation, their lot in life, the fact that they're 55 and they didn't ask for this divorce, the fact that they're 48 and they've never had a great relationship. They spend a lot of time blaming that their current scenario on the past and blaming it on the actions of their ex. They spend a lot of time studying psychopaths and narcissists and sociopaths and manipulative behavior. And they spend a lot of time looking outwardly at the other person and blaming the downfall of the relationship, the marriage on their ex's behavior. And there are, I'm sure, very valid reasons behind your ex, the dysfunction. Your ex was probably a narcissist. Okay. Let's just be frank about it. But when you do that, you're not taking responsibility fully in most cases for your own dysfunctional toxicity, your own dysfunction that is a match for somebody like that, your own emotional unavailability, your own fear of intimacy, your own trust issues. You're not fully taking ownership of that. And I see far too many times women getting stuck in the blame phase of their healing. And the blame phase is certainly a very valid, normal, important phase of your healing journey, but it's just one. And a lot of times I see women years after the relationship has ended or years after the divorce staying stuck, looking in the rearview mirror, living in the rearview mirror, still talking about what her ex is doing, still talking about what he did 20 years ago. That's the story they play over and over again. And they do this as a way to cope with feeling alone, to justify their feelings of loneliness, to not truly feel their aloneness or that loneliness or those uncomfortable feelings. Because when you are busy blaming somebody else, you're getting you're getting some kind of satisfaction. You get a cheap payoff by continuing to blame your circumstances on other people or your ex. So, just to quickly recap, two mistakes you might be doing that are keeping you locked in this loneliness feeling is that you're spending a lot of time distracting yourself and numbing yourself out with chronic busyness. And number two, you're spending a lot of time and energy and emotional resources continuing to blame your ex for your current situation in life. And you in some ways failing to take full ownership. And when I say taking ownership, this doesn't mean that you are making your ex's actions right or valid, or his behavior or his abuse right or valid. And it certainly does not mean that any mistreatment toward you was your fault. It means taking an honest, clear, compassionate look at your behavior, because it is only when we take ownership of our behavior and take full responsibility that we can truly start to change and take the necessary steps to change our behavior long term in our life. So, what does work in addressing your real problem of not being able to effectively handle uncomfortable emotions? The first thing is learning some type of trauma informed strategy that you can employ every day that's going to give you the skill of emotional regulation. So, a lot of times when we get applications for breakthrough sessions, sometimes people will have certain mental health conditions. And in research, those certain mental health conditions are rooted usually in unhealed trauma. And the one of the areas that can really improve those mental health conditions like anxiety or borderline personality disorder or even bipolar disorder is learning a healthy way to emotionally regulate yourself when you are faced inevitably with uncomfortable feelings throughout your day. So, here we use somatic therapy, which is evidence based and shown in research to be really effective at rewiring your brain and your body's automatic unconscious response, feeling emotional reaction to things, helping you rewire that to something that's more productive and healthy and helping you learn how to ride the wave. I call it riding the wave of an uncomfortable emotion fully. So most people feel a trigger or they feel anxiety or they feel loneliness and they allow themselves to feel that feeling to a certain point and then they hop off the wave and try to distract themselves. For a lot of women here, that distraction might be work, working 70-hour work weeks. That might be turning to binge researching narcissistic abuse online. That might be pouring a glass of wine or for every night. That might be getting on Sephora.com and shopping and spending $1,000 on makeup you don't really need. It could be a number of things, but people generally tend to feel the feeling and then they hop off the wave and they don't allow themselves the benefits to go all the way over. And when you go all the way over the wave, that feeling no longer has power over you. It loses its control over you. But unfortunately, many people are not fully aware that they're doing that. And then they don't have the patience or the tolerance to allow themselves to feel their feelings effectively and manage their feelings. When you have trauma and when you come out of an abusive relationship, there's a certain term called your window of tolerance. So, your window of tolerance relates to your ability to handle stress in your life, your ability to handle adverse scenarios in your life. And when you have been gaslit or when you've been manipulated or when you're constantly walking on eggshells, you are turning your stress response on all the time, basically. And so what happens is that your stress response starts working inadequately. You have a very small window of tolerance. So, your kid says something to you and it completely sets you off. You start making mistakes at work. A coworker sends an email. You misread the email, the intent of the email. You make up a story that this person's sending out to fire you or get you fired. So you tend to be very reactive in your life. And of course, we don't make healthy decisions, especially healthy relationship choices, when we're in a place of reactivity and when we have trauma that we haven't properly addressed yet. So beyond learning your emotional regulation skills, the next thing that you need to do is begin widening your window of tolerance. So here, when we work with clients and break the cycle every week, we give them things to do that are going to stretch their window of tolerance, like learning how to date themselves, doing things that are going to further their career, doing things that are going to further their financial outcomes, doing things that are some people, when they enroll, they're ready to start dating again. Okay, but they haven't been on a date in 4 years. So doing things that are going to stretch their comfort zone so that they get into different social settings, different settings with relationships, different people in their life. They put themselves in a position where they're going to feel vulnerable. They're going to feel potentially rejected, abandoned, like they don't fit in. And then they get the opportunity to use their emotional regulation skills in that moment to help them adjust and step up to a new level. So, breaking your cycle is really about number one, using a trauma informed strategy to rewire your psychology, rewire how you're thinking up here, and in turn, rewire what you're feeling down here in your body. And rewire those two things to be more in a positive state, more optimistic, forward thinking. I believe in my future. I believe in myself mindset and heart set. And your body is feeling happiness, peace every day. I feel grateful to be alive. More positive feelings than stuckness or numbness or boredom or apathy or grief or shame or whatever the things that might be going on for you right now. And then the second step is that you need to start taking actions out of your comfort zone daily, weekly, that are going to continue to widen your window of tolerance so that you get to use your trauma informed skills in your toolbox to help yourself emotionally regulate in that moment so that you're no longer turning to a glass of wine every night to numb yourself or to cope. You're no longer turning to work to fill a hole inside that never is full. You're no longer turning to dating. I was talking with somebody recently who'd gone on a lot of one off dates and nobody was the right person. You're no longer stuck on this hamster wheel, wondering if you're ever going to meet anybody and if you're ever going to fully feel whole and complete. You feel whole and complete when you properly heal your trauma. And at the same time, you start widening your window of tolerance in your life and start exposing yourself to new situations, new things. Because if you were in a long marriage or in a long relationship, you probably gave up most of your identity to fit in a toxic relationship, and you probably don't know who you are anymore. And the only way to truly know who you are anymore is to number one, get very good at effectively managing your uncomfortable feelings, which shame, fear of being alone, loneliness, all that kind of stuff. and then putting yourself in uncomfortable situations and learning to regulate yourself in those challenges and taking a lot of time to be alone and feel alone and like really explore that. So, if you're a professional woman, if you're successful in your career, if you're probably a perfectionist or you may be really hard on yourself, the tape that you're playing in your mind every day is like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get this right? I get things right in, my job, but I can't get it right in my love life. And I feel like a piece of, what? If that's you and you've already tried talk therapy, but you feel like you're spinning your wheels and you're not getting results, then I invite you to book a breakthrough call. Go to bethanydotson.com/talk. I want to be clear that we're for women who eventually want to have a healthy relationship. And they're at a point in their journey where they're like, I'm sick and tired of doing the same shit and getting the same result. That's the definition of insanity. Like, I'm at a state where I know I need something different. I know I am too close to the problem to objectively see what I'm doing wrong. And I need support to help me get past my fears. We're not for women who want to do it themselves or who are so guarded and full of fear that they're unwilling to try a different way or think outside the box. So if you're high achieving, you're professional, you have a problem, it's not getting better on your own, it's not getting better with YouTube videos or talk therapy, and you recognize time is precious, my life is precious, and I want to eventually spend it with a healthy partner. And in the meantime, I want to be so fucking wildly in love with my own life that if it never happens, great. But I want to feel so whole and complete in the meantime. That is, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Then again, go to bethanydotson.com/talk and book a time to speak with us. And we'll see if we can help you properly heal your trauma that talk therapy may have touched a little bit, but hasn't truly helped you create lasting changes in your love life or your life at large. And see if we can be the solution to your breaking the cycle. Have a beautiful rest of your afternoon, and I will talk to you very soon. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to today's show. A brand new episode drops each week. Be sure to click and subscribe. And remember, healing trauma, codependency, and your lifelong pattern in love does not happen by itself. You need expert guidance and evidence-based methods. And I've helped hundreds of incredible women from all over the country heal betrayal trauma and reclaim their confidence while falling wildly in love with their own lives and attracting healthy relationships. If you like what you heard today and you want to see if you're fit to work with us, go to bethanydotson.com/talk. That's bethanydotson.com/talk and book a call to speak with us today. We'll get on the phone for about 45 minutes and get you crystal clear on 3 things. The real reason you keep attracting dysfunctional relationships, even if you know better or even if you've done tons of work on yourself. What you really want in a relationship, how you want to feel emotionally every single day in your life, and what lifestyle changes you want to make. And then number 3, the exact strategy you need to be using to get there. Again, healing trust issues, codependency, and a lifelong pattern does not happen without expert guidance. We've helped hundreds of women across the country heal complex trauma, codependency, and have the healthiest relationships ever, both with themselves and with others. Go to bethanydotson.com/talk to book your call today. I'll see you on the next episode.